Okay, hi there, and welcome to another episode from the Expert Interview Series. And today I am very pleased to welcome the lovely Suzanne Dibble from Small Business Legal Academy. Now, Suzanne is the absolute go-to lady when it comes to practical, relevant business law advice for experts without the fear or confusion that most of us tend to associate with all things legal. Now, I know far too many of us, myself included, find it all too easy to kind of hide from the legal stuff, but we all know that this stuff is super important, especially when it comes to selling online courses. So you really don't have a choice here. You have to take the time to understand this stuff. And that's why I am so pleased that today we've got Suzanne to help us make sense of all things legal for courses. So hi, Suzanne. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you run your own online course, the Small Business Legal Academy, which is full of useful legal templates, documents, and all sorts of bits and pieces to help you kind of protect your small business. And of course, running your own online course, you know exactly what we need to keep us covered here. So for those who don't already know you, can you just share a little bit about your background, the who, what, and why you do what you do?
Sure. I started off in law in the traditional way. So I went to university and did a law degree, and then law school, and then I had a training contract at one of the biggest law firms in the world. And I qualified into the corporate department, which is all about mergers and acquisitions and private equity deals, the kind of things that you read about on the front page of the FT. And it was great fun. There was lots of adrenaline from doing the deals. You were sort of staying up all night, and it was a lot of fun. But eventually, the long working hours and it wasn't stress so much because I loved what I was doing, but the sort of intensity of it all starts to take its toll. And there were probably two things that led me to where I am. Well, probably three actually that led me to where I am now, rather than carrying on within that profession and being a partner at one of the world's biggest law firms. The first was that I just couldn't see a way to make it compatible with having a family. There was one other female partner in the department, and I overheard her on a Monday evening saying to her 3-year-old son, "Don't cry, Max, Mummy will see you at the weekend." And that was a Monday, and I just thought, I don't want that for my family. I don't want to only see my kids at the weekend. The second thing was health issues. I was constantly getting ill. I'd have cold after cold sore after cold sore, just minor stuff, but something was giving me a clear signal that my immune system wasn't as it should be. Mm. So my firm actually sent me to the doctors, who did a whole host of checks on me. Happily, everything was fine, but the doctor said to me, you really need to take this as a wake-up call about your way of life, because, I wasn't doing any exercise, I wasn't eating well, I was working long hours, etc., etc. Combine that with the fact that I'd previously worked with Richard Branson in a very, very entrepreneurial setting. And I've always loved business. My passion is business. I've been reading about business since I was like 16. Law is, it's kind of what I've done, but I've never really been passionate about it, if you like. It's more the business side of things that really excites me. And I'd always had a yearning to set up my own business. So ultimately, those three things are kind of what moved me away from that sort of traditional career in law and sort of just rising up the ranks of that partnership to actually breaking out and setting up my own business, which I absolutely love doing. I know you're very passionate about what you do, Dee, and I'm equally as passionate about my businesses. And I do two things now. So one is I still do legal work for my existing clients and for clients who I think are particularly fun to work with or have an interesting project. But then, like you said, a lot of work has been on my legal academy, which is, it's called the Small Business Legal Academy, but actually it probably should be renamed the Online Business Legal Academy, because it is very much focused around, the sort of experts among us who have that online presence. It also deals with people who have, say, an e-commerce shop, but there is a lot of stuff on there for the kind of coaches, consultants, experts, that type of person. It's not really so much for the hairdresser or the plumber. So actually the name Small Business Legal Academy is probably a bit of a misnomer. It should be the Online Entrepreneur Legal Academy or something like that. But I've also more recently started to do my business mentoring and mastermind groups, helping experts really to do what I've done, which is, number one, get more clients than I knew what to do with, which was which was, you know, an amazing position to be in. But it really got to the point where another email would come in and I would groan and think, oh God, I've actually got to spend the time turning that person down because I just didn't have enough hours in the day to actually, you know, do the work for them. And that's really what led to the creation of my online legal academy. So I help people who are at that stage in their expert journey. I help some people who are earlier on and need help getting that sort of consistent flow of leads of their ideal client, through to the people who've experienced that and they've reached that cap on their income because there just aren't any more hours in the day and they need to be putting into place an online course or some other type of passive income product. And I absolutely adore that work. So yeah, I'm very, very fortunate. I get to still keep my legal knowledge up to date and you know, be running with that, but also to be able to move into more of the business side is hugely exciting for me.
And then it's great. That's where so many people find themselves when they're coming to this point of creating a course, is because usually they've done something that they are the expert at, they're very passionate about, but you do get to that point where you're going, okay, I really don't have any more hours to do, but I would love to be able to serve so many more people. So that's when you start to, you know, take your expertise and turn it into a course. And in this series, I've spoken to a number of experts about along the process for that. And so turning it into the content for your course is one stage. And then once you've got it out there, then you've got your launch in. There's so many different elements. And actually having somebody to help you guide you through that process is invaluable, really, because you need to stay on track. There's so many things and so many elements, so many ideas that you've got to pull together. But the legal side of it is something that I know a lot of people let slide, but it's been more of a fear thing. I think most people are kind of frightened of not knowing what they need to put into it, and you put it to the side and you put it to the bottom of your list, and really you can't do that. So today, when we've spoken to a few of my course members, and I've asked them what questions that they would like have for you on our call today, and one of the big ones that came out quite a lot was really kind of where to start. And I know that is a huge question, but when you are to the point where you're ready to launch your course and you've put all of your time and energy into creating this, where can you start to make sure that you are going to be legally covered when you first put that sales page out?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, that there isn't an awful lot of information out there on the internet about the kind of legal things that you need to consider when you're doing this type of work. It's just not out there. I think I'm one of the few lawyers that's really in this industry, really understands it and has a sort of package that does the job, really. And so people would probably, I guess, generally start off by Googling, but there just isn't really anything out there that explains what you need. So, I mean, what I can obviously, I'm going to talk you through some of the basics here, but my fundamental advice is get in touch with me, because, you know, I've put together a package that saves the struggle and takes all the guessing out of it, and means that you know that you're going to be protected. And, you know, for what I hope is a very affordable price when you compare it to going and paying a solicitor's usual hourly rates. But the things that when you say, where do we need to start? The first thing that you need to start thinking about is really, and this is where anybody starting any type of business should, I believe, first start to think about, is guarding against liability. Okay, because that any type of business, what's on the line is potentially your personal liability. And with selling info products or whatever else, there is an element of liability. If you put something up there and it's out of date, or it's maybe, you know, the wrong advice, or someone interprets it the wrong way, then arguably they could bring a claim against you for that incorrect advice. So the first thing is to put as many blocks between you and that person as possible, so that they don't decide to bring a claim against you, and ultimately that you could risk losing your house or car or whatever it is. Okay.
So what do you mean? Sorry, just by blocks there. What are you do you mean by those blocks?
Yeah. So I'll come on to what they are.
I'm jumping ahead too quick.
Yeah. So the first thing that people can do, and I would always recommend that they have in place, is terms and conditions with, so the contract really between you and the people who are buying your online course. And that will do a lot of things, and not just limit your liability, but that is one of them, and arguably the most important one. And that pretty much says that, you know, and again, I can't go into all of the disclaimers in there, there's a lot, but an example is, you know, whilst we do our best to make sure that all the content in here is up to date. We won't be liable for anything that isn't up to date, and if you choose to rely on it, then we won't be liable because we haven't been able to give you individual advice, that type of thing.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you acknowledge that you've kind of done the best that you can, because you don't want to just be a sort of outright, we're not taking any responsibility for this at all, but legally you're limiting your liability. Then the second thing that you can do is have insurance, and I would recommend that if you haven't got business insurance anyway, then look into that. It's not hugely expensive. You can get a general business policy for about a couple of £100 a year, but make sure that if the online branch of your business is a new business, a new part of your business, and you've already got existing business insurance, then go back to your broker and just make sure that it does actually cover what you're now doing with the online course or whatever it is you're doing. Most insurers will want to see your terms of business, because insurance is just a backstop. Mm-hmm. The actual sort of facing off the liability is in your contract with your customer. So they will probably want to see your terms of business. That's another reason for having your good terms of business in place. And don't forget that with insurance, it is there as a backstop. So if you do have to claim under it, number one, will it actually cover you anyway? Because there might be exclusions. Number two, there might be an excess and that you have to pay. And number three, it's likely to impact on your premiums in the following year. So there's a number of reasons why you must have it as a backstop, but ideally you don't want to claim on your insurance. So that's why you have your terms of business there to have that sort of first defence to that liability. Mm-hmm. The third thing that you can do is trade through a limited liability company, because as the name suggests, that gives you limited liability. Now, if you're a sole trader and for some reason there's a claim against you and it goes to court and the court decides that you owe the other person 10 grand, 20 grand, whatever it might be, then if you're a sole trader, that person can literally get a charge over your personal assets, which means ultimately you could lose your car, your house, whatever it is, depending on the size of the claim. Mm-hmm. So I would look at how risky your business is, whatever it is you're doing, and if it's high value or there's an element of high risk, then I would look at, and also there's many other reasons for trading through a limited liability company as you grow anyway. And it's probably the case that if an expert's got to the stage where they're creating an online product, then you're probably at a position where your profits are likely to be over 25 to 30 grand a year anyway, which is where it's more economically, you're better off to be trading through a limited company anyway. So there's a few different reasons why you'd want to think about a limited liability company. Mm-hmm. But if you're not yet, then I recommend that you go and have a chat with your accountant about it and see whether that would be it would be a good time now to convert from being a sole trader to trading through a limited company. So they're the three blocks, if you like, that you can put between you and the angry customer. Not that anyone's going to have any, obviously, because the courses are going to be all so wonderful and whatever. But you do get a few nutters out there, to be fair, who will chance on anything they can to make life a bit difficult for you. And if you can rest safe in the knowledge that you've got those three protections between you and that angry customer, it makes your life an awful lot bit easier. And that goes for any business. They're not particularly relevant just to solely relevant to online courses, but just think about the terms and conditions for your new online business, because they will need to be different from the ones that you've got with your existing, sort of one-to-one business or however you're carrying on business at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. When you say they're going to have to be different, obviously it's an online business compared to one-to-one. Do you have to have a completely new, fresh set of terms and conditions, or is it a lot of kind of cut and paste, or how do you go about determining what content goes on which set of terms and conditions? Yeah,
I wouldn't advise anybody to try to cobble together either of those agreements, but if they really want to, then probably some of it they could use. But when you start selling online, there's a whole different set of laws that come into play. Mm-hmm. And legally, you have to provide quite a lot of different information to your customer before they place the order, even more so if you're selling to consumers. So I don't know, if you had a fitness online product or something like that, then you're selling to consumers. And then the consumer contract regulations come into play. Mm-hmm. And there are lots of things, and they're fairly new regulations, and there are lots and lots of things that you need to have in your terms of business or you won't be compliant with those laws. And also things like there's specific laws now on digital content. And if you haven't said exactly the right things in your terms of business, then people could download all the content and then at any time in up to 12 months ask for a full refund, and you would legally have to give them a full refund.
Okay, yeah.
So there's lots of particular wording, and in fact it's showing the age, I suppose, in that this new regulation came out a couple of years ago, and it had a specific section on digital content. So it's keeping with the times and recognizing that, you know, digital content is now so important in the world of business.
Yeah, definitely. And I assume all of your templates that you've got as part of your online program, I assume, are all up to date and cover all of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've got, I mean, there's about 25 videos in the library on all different areas of online business, but there's 3 specifically on the consumer contracts regulations, because it is quite a complex bit of legislation. And yeah, all of the templates are fully compliant with those regulations.
So we mentioned terms and conditions then. Are there, would you say there's a top like hit list of things that you really definitely must make sure as of today that you've got there for your, to make sure your course content is covered? So terms and conditions, disclaimers.
Yeah.
Are there a series of these that you need to have? Are they very different between each one? And could you give me just a little bit of an overview of what the top checklist items that you would have for your course?
Yep. Sure. So probably the next main thing, other than liability, is you want to be sure that you're protecting your IP, okay, your intellectual property. The last thing you want to do is spend, you know, however many hours and months, years, whatever, creating your fantastic online product, and then someone comes along and effectively steals it, and you find yourself in a position where you can't do an awful lot about it. So you definitely need to include some wording about that in your terms and conditions, and of course that's covered in my template terms and conditions that are in the Legal Academy. But also there's copyright wording that you'd be wise to put on most, if not all, of your materials. So for example, on all my templates, I have a little paragraph at the top in red that says, you know, the usual copyright sign with my name and the year. This is copyright protected. You can't share it with anyone. You know, I'm the owner. You can't copy it. But more importantly, you can't share it with anybody, because, you know, I think people are generally okay about it. But you do get some people who I know will buy a course and then they'll think they can just send the link and the login details to all of their mates.
Yeah.
You know, which frankly isn't on, you know. So we need to make really clear every way you can, really, because that's in my terms and conditions. And yet I've had a lot of people come to me, and obviously you can never fully protect against it, because anything, I mean, there's technical solutions, you know, you can have watermarks and you can have people access things only a number of times and whatever, but ultimately you can't really restrict it. But I've had to tell, you know, people who were quite innocently going to share all of my content with their business buddies, and I had to say, whoa, no, you know, look at, you know, terms and conditions. I thought it was obvious that people would assume that you can't do that, but no, they didn't at all. So that's why I've got these big, bold, red statements at the top of every bit of material saying, you know, you can't copy it, you can't share it, and if you do, you know, we will have to take action against you.
Yeah, that's so true, because you do think sometimes that being, especially in the industries and working business to business, that you think that people would assume that you can't sell something. You've bought a user access and that's one-time user access for it. But actually, you've got to make that perfectly clear, because unfortunately, a lot of people do tend to share user access or download and just think, oh, well, I'll just send this PDF document over to somebody that I know because it's useful. And you're sharing content, and that is beneficial in one way to people because you're getting your information out there. But of course, it's not fair on the other members and people that are paying for your access to your content, and you can't give everything away for free all the time.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's free content that we're delighted for people to share, but when it comes to a paying course that you know, it's your life's work or at least a year's work or whatever it might be, you know, you just can't have that happening. And I have a very useful checklist for people to check whether their existing content has already been infringed. Well, actually, it's kind of in 2 stages. The first is what you need to do, what steps you need to take to make sure that your content is protected. And I believe that that does include the copyright wording that I've just been talking about, but also gives you a checklist to go through to check whether your content is already out there on the net in an unauthorized way. So if you want to, I can give people the link to go and get that checklist, and they can download it for free.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be very useful.
Copyright protection checklist.
Okay.
Shall I give the URL now, or should we do it at the end?
Yeah, pop the URL, and what I'll do is I'll make sure that we've got that on the video as well, so that people can see it.
Okay, great. So it's my website, which is www.suzannedibble.com/copyright protection.
Copyright protection.
And that will take them to the checklist. And Suzanne Dibble is SUZANNEDIBBLE.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant.
So that's the second main thing, is really to protect your IP and make sure that nobody else is doing something naughty with it. Alongside that is if people are licensing content in. So if maybe you've got contributors to your site or user generated content or things like that, then you need to cover the legals of that off as well, because you need to be licensed properly to use that content on your site. Okay, because you want to be able to use it how you want. You don't want to have, someone later saying, oh, well, I didn't mean for you to use it that way, or, I'm expecting royalties or whatever it might be. Things like this, probably fine. You know me well enough that I'm not going to, phone you up and say, oh, I didn't realise you were going to post this interview here, there or there. But if you have something more than this, where, people are maybe contributing to a module or something like that, then you want to make it really clear, what you can do, which is, you would try to get that completely unrestricted, but B, what they can do with it, because you don't want them going off and replicating that content somewhere else outside of your course. Yeah, I know that. I've seen that happen sometimes strictly with webinars, where people have done webinars that have been part of a paid membership and agreed to it, but having not looked into the actual kind of terms or contracts between people, then that's been shared outside of where they were willing to initially give that kind of information away. So it's very clear. Usually, and a lot of people try to rely very much on kind of just having these open conversations and believe that there will always be trust when you're doing business with people, but you do need to have yourself covered as well, don't you? Yeah, absolutely. And then, there are, with an online business, people are probably going to have a website anyway, but I think it's worth mentioning that there are certain things, again, by law that you have to have on your website. So I'm sure most people have heard of a privacy policy, a cookie policy, website terms of use, but maybe a lot of people don't actually have them, and they don't really realise the implications of not having them. So if you don't have the right privacy policy, for example, then that really restricts what you can do with what is, probably going to be your most important asset, your list, your email list. If you're not collecting your names of your subscribers in the right way and telling them exactly what you're going to be doing with that information, then there are chances that you won't be able to use it as you want down the line. So it's really important to get privacy policy in place. Cookie policy you should have by law. For those people who don't know what a cookie is, it's that little bit of data that kind of tracks our online behaviour. And by law, we have to have a little statement on our website that says, if we use non-essential cookies, what they actually do. Most of us will be using non-essential cookies because something like Google Analytics is a non-essential cookie. So you just have to have a little statement that says what the cookies are, what they do, and give the user the right to disable the cookies, if you like. There was, when this law came in, if you remember, Dee, there was a lot of hoo-ha about having the pop-ups. Yes. And now, sort of guidance from the ICO has been that we don't necessarily have to have the pop-ups. We can have implied consent, but we do need something, because it is still, in theory, you could be fined £500,000 for not doing that. Now, that's never going to happen. You'll probably get a slap on the wrist from the ICO, but if someone reports you, you really don't want to be investigated by the ICO and have that process to go through. So it's just a lot easier to get your sort of one-page statement and whack it up there. Yeah, I suppose for the time it takes to just make sure you've got that on your site somewhere, it's just worth doing. Exactly. But I would say do be careful about the documents that your website providers provide you with, because I know that sometimes website providers will give you, like, you know, your web developer will give you some standard documents. Now, I've seen some and they're just not up to scratch, quite frankly. So I would say, you know, they're probably better than nothing. Well, some maybe. They're probably better than nothing, but, you know, they're not lawyers. They've got it, cobbled it together from somewhere, and it might not be appropriate for what you need. So, you know, if in doubt, go to the people who do know what they're talking about, i.e. me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing just to touch on, which is fairly unique to our industry, is using affiliates.
Okay.
So if you're using affiliates to promote your online course, then you really do need to have affiliate terms in place. And the main things that you need to draw out of those terms are, and this is particularly where people get a little bit tied up, is that it's all about the payment. So obviously you need to be really clear about what percentage affiliate commission they're going to get. Yeah. But more importantly, it's when that payment's due, because you've got to factor in, if you're launching an online course and you've got maybe you've given a 60-day guarantee or something like that, then if you're paying your affiliates out on day 10 and yet you can be giving your own refunds up to day 60, then that's not going to be ideal for you. So you need to make that clear to your affiliates up front and in the terms of affiliate terms with them, when exactly you're going to pay, and you need to make sure that gives you sufficient period for all of the refunds, clawbacks, anything else. There's a whole load of other protections that we put in there. The other one legally is that affiliates aren't, if affiliates make an overstated claim about your product, your online product, because they want to sell more and get more affiliate commission, then that is as though you've given that misleading statement yourself.
Okay.
And we can really get done for that. You know, we can get fined, I think it's up to £5,000, and we can actually go to prison for that. Wow. So we need to be really clear in our terms to say, because normally we'll send them some wording on an email to say, you know, here's a suggested email to promote to your list, but, you know, feel free to tweak it a bit for your own personal voice. That's fine. But if they're actually exaggerating the benefits of the product or lying about, you know, what results they've had from it or whatever, then that impacts on us and can impact significantly. So we would need to have in the terms to say that they can't do that. You know, that they just cannot overstate the products, the benefits and features of the product. Yeah. So that's another one to have, affiliate terms, if you are looking to, you know, get affiliates promoting your online product.
Yeah, that's quite a big one, that one. If that involves going to prison, you've definitely got to pay attention to that. Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's making me think, all of these statements you're going through is making me think, gosh, I need to go and recheck everything that I've got and just go through and spend some real time making sure that I'm absolutely covered with everything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a lot to consider, actually. And that's obviously just the top 5. You know, there's more things to consider. Yeah. But as I say, the fact is that there isn't much of this knowledge out there. No. And actually, probably, if you speak to half the people who do launches, they probably won't have considered half of it. And that's fine as long as nothing trips you up. But I've spoken to enough people who are doing this kind of thing where they have had the claims or they have had the fallout with the affiliate, etc. And if you can get it all, you know, tied up, and it's not actually going to cost you that much money to do or that much effort, then why the heck not, you know?
Yeah, it's all happy and fine until something does go wrong, and then if you're not covered, that's going to have massive repercussions on yourself and your business and your brand and everything that you going forward. And if you are a sole trader, obviously your life and your house and everything could be included in that. So that kind of leads me on to one of the final questions I had, which was around what are the biggest mistakes that you see people making when putting their expert content out there as a course. Now, obviously it's a massive mistake to just ignore any of the terms and conditions and think that you don't need that. But is there anything else that you see specifically experts doing when they convert their one-to-one content into one-to-many that's a big mistake?
Yeah, sure. The biggest thing probably is that they will copy terms off an American website, because, you know, the US leads the way in this kind of thing. And they've had an incident and I say, oh, did you have your terms in place? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll look, and they've clearly copied it from a US website. And guess what? US law doesn't apply over here, you know? So it really had, you know, the stuff they were talking about in those terms had no legal application over here. So it was almost like they didn't have those terms in place. So you know, that, and actually we managed to settle it, but it would have been a lot easier to settle if we'd have had the right terms in place at the start. You know, it was a lot of expense and time and stress to get to that position, whereas if we'd have had the right terms in place at the start, that wouldn't have happened. Also, other mistakes that people make are with their names, the names of the online business or the online course. We still need to think about the same things as when we think about naming any business, and that is that if it's going to be too similar to somebody else's online program that does something similar, then, you know, if they find out about it, there's a good chance that we will be sued, or, you know, have to change, and with the end result being either we have to pay them some money, or best case scenario, we have to change and rebrand the whole course, which I don't know about you, but with my like 60 templates and 50 videos and all the rest of it, it would be an absolute nightmare if I had to rebrand all of my course materials.
Definitely. And if you've already paid out and invested in somebody creating all of that materials, if you had to then go and do it again, it could be a big financial implication on you as well. Exactly.
So really do think about you know, the name of it, and if it's going to be a really big product for you, a signature program, then think about whether it is capable of being trademarked, so that if, you know, somebody else can't do the same to you, so they can't come and have a similar or same name program and try and trade off the back of your goodwill. And there's lots of things that you need to consider in a name as to whether it's capable of being trademarked. For example, it can't be too descriptive. It's got to be distinctive. So if you named your course Amazing Online Design Course, that probably wouldn't be capable of being trademarked because it's too descriptive. Okay. But if you named it By Design, spelled the way that you have, then that's great. That's very distinctive, and it's capable of being, I'm sure would be capable of being trademarked.
And I've got By Design trademarked.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah. So just think a little bit carefully about that, because I've not actually dealt with them myself, but I've definitely heard of instances where people have had to do that complete rebrand because they chose a name that was too similar to somebody else's online program.
And it just for the time that it takes to, as you say, go into that and just really make sure that there isn't anything else out there. You can obviously pay somebody to go into the IP side of things and really go into depth on it, but just be aware of it and make sure, because you really don't want to have to go down changing the name once you've put all of your, especially if you're doing a lot of marketing and a lot of goodwill out there and getting people used to who you are and what the name of your course is. If you then had to completely scratch it and start again, I want to avoid that.
It would be a complete nightmare. Absolutely. So they're probably the two things that come to mind. I could probably, if you gave me longer to think about it, I'd probably come up with a list of another 20, but there is a lot to consider. And things do go wrong, and I think it's great that someone like you is doing this, you know, someone who isn't in the legal world as it were, is you know, really highlighting that fact that things can go wrong, and that it's an awful lot easier and less costly to just put it all in place at the start, and then you've got it set up for however long the life of your course is. And that's why I was so glad when I did kind of come across you the other year and we got connected then, and I heard about all of this, because it is something that when you type it into Google, it's a minefield out there of legal information that you don't know if it's right, or if it's just, you know, something thrown up by something like Wikipedia or somebody's just advice that you don't know. And a lot of it will be from the US. So, you know, and that's where a lot of people come unstuck, because they will Google it, and there is more about this type of area from the US, but it's a completely different legal system, and a lot of people don't realise that.
And that's what comes through when you're billing as well for your course. If you're choosing if you wanted to bill in US dollars and UK pounds, there's a lot around that area as well, that you can't just copy and replicate what people are doing in America. Although great for launch strategies and looking at the way they market, because they are very advanced with that side of things. But yes, you've got to remember that you are a business in the UK and that you have to abide by our legal system here.
Saying that though, with the internet as it is, you know, anyone really can buy your product. So other things to mention are, I hope people will have heard of the new VAT place of supply rules. So if you're selling into Europe, then if you do have sales outside of the UK, into Europe, then you have to register for you don't have to, but it's advisable to register for the HMRC one-stop shop here, which, and we now have to pay VAT so even if you sell one product into Europe, you have to pay VAT on that one product. And it's a bit of a massive administrative hassle, but that now the law, and the consequences of not doing that are quite grim. Now, I've got a blog post on that. So if you go to my site, which is www.suzannedibble.com. If you go to blog posts, it's a fairly recent blog post, or you can just Google my name and VAT mess, and you'll be able to get a very comprehensive guide to what has happened on that. And also, if you do become a member of my academy, then we've got a full-on video on that, and an interview with an accountant as to the practical. Yes,
I remember at the time it was a big hoo-ha around it. At the time, there were so many people kind of trying to find out what the actual legal side of it was and what the real kind of implications were. And there's so much talk about it that it was all a bit of a mess at the time, definitely.
Yeah, and so I think they're probably still. I know that we're still in talks with the Commission about it, because I don't think the government or HMRC had realised the impact that it would have on so many smaller businesses. To them, a small business is like 5 million turnover with 80 employees. I don't think they realise the scale of the people who are sort of a 1 to 5 man team selling, info products type, for example. And it is. I know they are still debating it, and I know that there are pressure groups that are trying to negotiate a threshold in the same way that, we only have to register as businesses for that once we hit about 80 grand. They're trying to get a similar threshold for sales into Europe. But at the moment, it is the case that just one sale into Europe and you would have to register for this one-stop shop and do all the usual sort of VAT accounting on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, it's definitely worth looking into that again and keeping on top of it and an eye on it, because it can have massive implications on how you run your business. And I know a lot of people at the time decided that, hang on, I'm just going to pull all online products until some information gets resolved.
Which I personally thought was a bit dramatic.
It was a bit dramatic, yeah.
Because I know the way the HMRC works, and the government works. They're not going to have a massive police force, going around the country on day one to every small business checking whether we're all. And saying that, spot checks can and do happen, but I think that with any new law, they're going to be less draconian than they would otherwise if it'd been in for 10 years and you're blatantly kind of ignoring it. And they did actually put in a guidance note to say, as long as you are considering it, that you would not sort of be penalised.
Yeah.
But the other thing to note while we're talking about selling into other jurisdictions is that if you do a lot of sales, or you're planning to do a lot of sales into the US, then they have their own laws around this. And I'm sure you'll all have seen the earnings disclaimers and things like that. So particularly where you're selling a product that is around the kind of teaching people how to make money in business area, then you need to be really careful about your earnings disclaimers, which need to go on the bottom of your website and in your course materials. Saying that wherever you are, if you're selling a lot into South Africa, Australia, Canada, whatever, there will be local laws that apply to each of those jurisdictions. But, obviously it's impractical to go round to every jurisdiction and, have that all covered off. But, in theory we should. But what I'd say is, wherever you are hoping to sell the most, so if you're hoping that a lot of people in the US will be buying, then that's definitely one area where I would suggest that you go and take a look at what others are doing. Or I'm actually about to do a joint venture with a lady who has a similar package to mine for this industry, really. And that will be coming out in sometime later this month. So if people do want an American package for selling into the States that is quite similar to what I'm offering, then maybe we can post the link, Dee. And
yeah, definitely.
I know a lot of people ask me if there is anyone like me in the States, and until now I haven't really been able to direct them anywhere. But this particular thing is going to cover the US, Australia and Canada and the UK. For this type of industry.
Before.
So if you are selling into any of those jurisdictions.
Oh, sorry. I cut off then.
This is Jenna.
Yes.
Yeah. she's very aimed at women. She's very sparkly in her branding. So no, I think it's actually a different lady, more on the sort of coaching expert side than the other one. So she covers the States, Australia, Canada, and my offering in the UK. So if you are selling into those jurisdictions and focusing on those, then you would be wise to look into that.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Well, we are kind of coming up now, actually, to the 45 minutes already. We've covered so much information. It's been brilliant. I would like to kind of sum it up there. If there was any other bits of information that you wanted to any links to anything else, then definitely send those over, and I'll make sure that that's included here, because this is such an important subject for people, and it is really, really important to block out a day or an afternoon or even an hour if you can only afford it, but just really. And
that's all it takes, really. It really is just to block out one day and to work through it is probably all you need. And I think there was a survey 2 years ago by the Legal Services Board, and the average cost to small businesses per year of legal issues, so legal stuff that had gone wrong basically, was about £6,700 per year.
Yeah.
And I know from my experience of dealing with hundreds and hundreds of small businesses, generally they're things that could very easily have been avoided if they'd have just, if they'd come to me and I'd said, okay, you just need to put that one page in place. Like literally one paragraph in certain cases, and it would have saved them, 10 grand or whatever it is. But the average price per small business in the UK of not looking after their legal affairs is £6,700 per year. So if you haven't actually had a problem yet, then statistically you're very lucky.
Yes.
But statistically, you probably better off start paying it attention, because chances are statistically that it will catch up with you.
Yeah, and if you've been lucky so far, then you're likely to run out sooner than later.
I don't want to sound like a doom-mongerer, but having worked with hundreds of small businesses, and it is often the smallest things. Like, for example, another example is using, and we do this in our online courses, of course, is using stock photos without the right licenses. And Getty Images had their a year or so ago, they were sending small business owners letters demanding up to £5,000 in some cases for unauthorised use of images, because people had just gone in and copied and pasted the photo without the proper licence. And they had invented a web crawling software that identified the images and then checked whether you were licensed properly. And if you weren't, you got sent a letter that said, you owe us £5,000. And I know so many small business owners who paid up. I mean, I did a meaty blog post on the topic, and my advice was to not pay up and to go back and do, 3 steps and whatever. And that kind of got most people out of it. But I know a number of small business owners had just received this very threatening letter and had paid up, £5,000, and £5,000 to a small business out of the blue is it's a big hit.
Yeah.
So just being aware of things like that, can, save you an awful lot of time, stress and money.
Yeah, that was one I remember paid a lot of attention to, because obviously with what I do with design side of things, it's really, I'm always very cautious making sure that my customers know that they need the license for images. If I buy images for you to use in your business, that I know a lot of people that have used the images from stock images that other designers have bought, but actually the license is with the designer, not with the business. So you're better off making sure that you've got the license yourself in your business when you're using any stock imagery. I like to just get your iPhone out and go into the streets and take pictures of anything.
Absolutely.
And then you've got it's your business to use.
Absolutely, because even with photographers that you might know, if somebody else has taken the photograph, then legally they own the copyright in that photo. And if you want to use it on your website, then you legally need to be licensed. I mean, depending on how matey they are, if they're your mate, they're unlikely to then sue you for unauthorised use. But, some professional photographers, if you were, contracted with them to only use it for one thing, and then you've decided that you want to use it for something completely different, they would be within their rights to say you weren't licensed for that, and they could claim a percentage of the profits, or and demand that you cease using it, etc. So be really careful around that as well.
Yeah, as you say, we could talk all day about all of this. There's so much to think about, but it is well worth, I say, blocking out. I think I'm going to block out a whole day and go through everything that I've got just to really make sure. I'll probably be on the phone to you at some point or on email going, can you?
Well, there's always the Facebook group for people in my academy, which people love, because obviously it saves that sort of panic stroke, hours trawling through the internet. You literally just pop a question in there and you've got your answer within 5 minutes. So feel free to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So as we wrap up then, what is your one top tip, one thing that anyone and everyone should and can and really must do, I suppose now today, to make sure that their course is going to be covered?
In general, take it seriously. You're not playing at business. This, doing this kind of stuff does have quite big legal repercussions if you don't do it right. So the one thing that I would say to do is, the easiest thing is you can sign up for my free copyright protection checklist. That will get you a tenth of the way along the line. And then I'll invite you to come be a member of my online community. You can find out more about my academy. If you like the sound of that, then come and join us. If not, then just get as much as you can from the free community. That's absolutely fine. But that really is my advice. Take this seriously. I've made well over 6 figures from my online academy. Great, and that's why we love it. Passive income, earning money while you sleep. If you don't count the 2 months where I killed myself actually creating the thing in the first place. Yeah. But it is, and that's kind of on a sort of annual basis. So it is a serious business, and with that comes with certain responsibilities. And it's so much easier to get it, like you say, just block out that day and get it right at the start. So yeah, I could say, oh well, go off and tinker with that, but it's not going to serve anyone. It really isn't. Leave it to the experts is my honest advice in this case. It's too complicated and too important to get wrong. Yeah. Much more affordable than you think, and practical, relevant advice, not sort of theoretical legal advice that you can't work out. So that's my advice. Just talk to the experts. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah, this is one thing that you need to have real expert advice, not somebody's opinion on things. So what I will do is I'll put all of the links to that checklist and documents that we've mentioned, so that everyone can go ahead and download those. And brilliant. So thank you very much again for joining me today. We've just run over a little bit on time there, but it's been so useful. So thank you so much.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.